worried about climates, and why should we spend some time thinking about them? Well, because in some ways, people behave very much like animals. And specifically, when we feel as though we are being attacked or threatened, we react very much like animals in the wild do. Let's think about for just a second a wild animal. Let's take a bobcat. In the wild, let's say this bobcat senses a threat. What do? Well, what they do is they stand very still for just a second, right? They take stock of what's going on, they listen, they look, and maybe they see a threat. So if they see a threat, what do? Often, they react by running away. They think they can outrun whatever that other predator is, and they run. That way they get away. Or they stand their ground and fight. And if their goal is to stay there and fight, what's the ultimate goal? To win. And how's the ultimate win? To kill or maim the other animal. Whatever that threat is, they want to hurt it, so that they can get away from whatever it was that was threatening them. Sad reality is that people are very much like that. With the exception that usually we don't respond physically to a threat that we perceive. We respond a little bit differently, but it's still that same fight or flight tendency. Jack Gibb, in a very classic article, identified 6 behaviors that, when utilized, will likely trigger an instinctive defensive reaction, which means that without even thinking about it, we respond defensively. He also identified 6 contrasting behaviors that, when they're utilized, can help maintain a supportive climate, a climate where it's easier to talk about whatever the issue is rather than to react defensively. So what we want to identify, what we want to better understand, is what Gibb's 6 defensive climates are, so that as a sender of messages or as a receiver of messages, we don't fall into those traps. We don't react the way animals in the wild do, get our defenses up, and maybe not physically, but attack whoever that person is that we feel as though is threatening us. Okay, so we don't want to feel threatened. We don't want to threaten others. It's important then to think about what are those behaviors. And again, Gibb identified 6 of them. We're going to take them in order and just discuss what they look like and what they sound like. The first one is evaluation. And what Gibb identified in terms of evaluation is where we are judging people. And there are many instances where we have to judge people. If you're the supervisor of an employee, you have to judge people on their performance. If you're in a relationship, sometimes we evaluate other people. And what we want to avoid in this kind of evaluation is how Gibb defines it. And Gibb often defines it in a way that we would call labeling or judging other people. Evaluative words would be things like, "Oh, you're so lazy. How could you be so inconsiderate?" If you think about it, when someone says that to you, "Oh, you're so lazy, you're so inconsiderate," your natural instinct isn't to say, "Oh man, you're right, I'm just going to fix my behavior." No. Our natural instinct is for our claws to come out and for us to want to scratch at that person who is evaluating us. It is an instinctive reaction. And it's very normal for us to respond instinctively in that way when we feel as though we are being judged. So that's one of the behaviors that might tend to instinctively trigger a defensive reaction, where I feel like I have to defend myself. I'm not willing to listen to what you have to say because what I'm focused on is defending myself. The fight or flight tendency, where I feel as though I have to defend myself. Okay, the second behavior that Gibb identified that tends to trigger an instinctive defensive reaction is control. And again, there are many instances where if I'm a supervisor, I have to do some variation of controlling other people. In a work environment, there are many instances where we control. Now, when this is triggered to create an instinctive defensive reaction is where it feels as though someone is putting their thumb on you to try to get you to do what they want because they can. I'm the boss and I am going to control. You cannot do this anymore. Don't you even think about doing that. That feels like control. That feels like someone's thumb is right on top of us. And I don't know about you, but when someone's thumb is on top of me and they are trying to control me, I want to get out from under that thumb. And then maybe I want to bite that thumb. I want to do something to defend myself because I feel as though I am being attacked. And that's instinctive, and that tends to be a normal reaction, a natural reaction that we have. Okay, so that's control. The third behavior that Gibb identified was strategy. And in this sense, strategy doesn't mean being a strategic thinker and thinking about what might happen if. Strategy for Gibb meant manipulation. So in Gibb's terminology, what triggers a defensive reaction, and an instinctive defensive reaction, is where I'm trying to manipulate. I'm trying to use strategy to get what I want, maybe without you knowing that that's what I want. So I'm trying to manipulate you. And again, when people discover that they are being manipulated, their instinctive reaction isn't, okay, fine, I know where you're trying to go, and so I'll do what you want me to do. No, it's, I'll just show him or I'll just show her. They're not going to get away with this. Our defenses start up, and we respond defensively. Okay, the fourth behavior that Gibb identified was neutrality. And again, sometimes we think of neutral with the connotation that it's not bad. If something's neutral, it's okay. It's not really good, it's not really bad, it's just neutral. What Gibb meant with the term neutrality was maybe what we would call apathy or a lack of concern. With our current language. And neutrality in Gibb's world is where I don't care what you think. You have an idea, I completely ignore it. You have an idea, I say, oh no, you don't know what you're talking about. That's not really your field of expertise, so you just need to be quiet on this issue. And again, if you think about it, how would we respond if someone talked to us like that? We wouldn't respond, oh yeah, they're right. I really don't know enough about this. No, we'd respond with our claws coming out. We would try to scratch, figuratively in most cases, but we would try to attack that person because you attacked me. You told me my opinions don't matter, or I don't know enough about this situation. Or with neutrality, maybe you just ignored me. You just didn't pay any attention to what I had to say. I said something in class and I was just ignored. Again, that's not going to bring about a good end result. It's going to tend to bring about an instinctive defensive reaction. Okay, the fifth behavior that Gibb identified was superiority. And superiority sounds something like this. I know more than you are. I'm in charge. I'm the boss, and so you have to do what I say because I'm better, smarter, whatever. And again, it's very easy to think about what our natural reaction would be to someone who operates with superiority. We get defensive. We try to prove them wrong. We try to diss them in some way, shape, or form because we feel as though we are being attacked. Superiority, pretty easy to understand. The last behavior that Gibb identified that would tend to trigger an instinctive defensive reaction is certainty. Certainty is where I know I'm right just because I know I'm right. Or we've done that for 25 years. That's the way it's always been. That's the way it's going to be done. Or because I say so. Any of those things where you convey from a communication perspective that you are absolutely right, and so every other answer must be absolutely wrong. And again, I don't know about you, but when someone approaches me with certainty, oh, that's never going to work, my whole goal in life becomes to prove them wrong. To prove that they are wrong because it felt like an attack. It felt as though by your saying your way was right, that you were perhaps not saying, but implying that my way was wrong. And so our instinctive reaction isn't going to be, oh yeah, you must know what you're talking about. You must be right, so I'll go along. That's not what happens. So the downside, of course, is sometimes we don't even think about these behaviors. We don't realize we're using them because sometimes we have to evaluate people, or we have to control situations, or we don't have time, and so we treat people with neutrality because we don't have time to listen to them. Or we are in charge, or we are in a superior position for whatever reason. We still need to remember that if I am sending a message that sounds as though it is superior or evaluative or controlling or any of those behaviors, that the natural reaction that we're going to get is for people to shut down. They may flee, they may use fight or flight. They may flee and just, kind of either physically leave or just shut down and they may be looking at you, but they may not be listening to you. Or we fight back, usually verbally, but we fight back with words because we feel as though we have to, because we feel as though we've been attacked. Now, the good news is that in Gibb's classic article, he also identified 6 corollary behaviors that countered each of those defensive climate behaviors. So, and we're going to go through that list right now. Instead of evaluation, which is I'm judging you, you're inconsiderate, you're rude. The problem with inconsiderate or rude is that you can't see it. Right? You can't see what inconsiderate means. And in our heads, we might be saying, well, yes, I can. What inconsiderate means is that you didn't hold the door open for me. Or what rude means is that you didn't let me finish what I was saying. Those are behaviors. Those are describing behaviors of what rude or inconsiderate actually looks like. And that's what Gibb's talking about with that first supportive climate behavior of description, where I'm not evaluating, but to get to description, I may need to evaluate. I may need to say in my head, gosh, that was rude. And it's about to come out of my mouth, but I pull it back and I say to myself, what was rude? What did he or she do or say that was rude? And when you're describing, that's what you're answering. You're thinking about, what did I hear you say? Or what did I see you do? And that's the language that you're using to address the problem if you're going to be talking about a problem. And usually with evaluation, we bring it up because there's some sort of problem we want to deal with. It's easier to deal with the problem if I describe the behaviors that I observed. So if I've decided that it was rude that you left before I was ready, or that you don't show up for class on time. If I'm evaluating that as rude, what would be better for me when we talk about it is for me to say, I'm concerned because you showed up late 4 times. Or I'm bothered by yesterday's example of where you left even though I wasn't ready. So I need to figure out if this is description or not, really truly ask yourself, am I talking about something that I actually heard someone say or something that I saw someone do? If that's the language that I'm using, then I'm probably describing. Will using description absolutely avoid a defensive climate? The sad reality is no. Because we can't control, even though we'd like to, we can't control other people. What we can control is our behaviors, though. And if I talk about what I saw or what I heard, there's less likelihood that the other person will automatically become defensive, because there's less likelihood that they will instinctively feel threatened and that their hackles will instinctively raise. And remember, that's what we're trying to avoid. We're trying to be able to create a supportive climate, a climate where I feel as though it's okay to talk. I feel as though I'm not going to be attacked. And that's what we want to do with description. That's one of the 6 behaviors that Gibb identified that can help us create and maintain a supportive climate. Okay, so first is describing instead of evaluating. Second is very closely related to that. It's problem orientation instead of control. And remember, with control, it's I'm telling you what you have to do no matter what. Because for whatever reason, I've decided I'm going to tell you what to do. And again, our instinctive reaction is to get defensive. It's harder for us to get defensive. It's easier for us to maintain a supportive climate if we focus on the problem. If, as we are senders of messages, we really think about what the problem is and we discuss the problem. If I'm telling you you have to do this by a certain date, I need to ask myself why. What is it that is triggering that need for me to tell someone how they should be reacting? What I want to use is problem orientation. And I think the easiest way to think about problem orientation is to separate the problem from the person that you're talking to. So if there's something that you're doing that I think you need to stop doing, bring the problem right out there, literally, figuratively. Take the problem apart from the individual. You need to show up for work on time. It's also, that's describing, right? You need to show up for work on time, but it's also controlling. And that's why it also will trigger defensiveness. Instead of you need to show up for work on time, The office has to be open by 8 a.m. And because you're the person who comes in at 8, that's critical. So the problem is the office hasn't been opened on time for the past 3 days. Or the problem is the trash isn't getting taken out in time for the weekly trash pickup. Or the clothes are still on the ground when I thought we agreed that X, Y, and Z would happen. So you think about what is the problem, separate it from the person, and try to talk about the problem as though it is a thing out here. That will help, again, to try to create and maintain a supportive communication climate. Is it a guarantee? The sad reality is no, it's not a guarantee. But if you think about it from your own perspective, when someone tries to control you, don't we automatically, instinctively get defensive? Whereas if we really tried to talk, if someone tried to talk to us about a problem that needed solved, it would be less likely for us to get defensive, and that's what we're shooting for. So we know those two behaviors. You can describe instead of evaluate. You can focus on the problem instead of controlling. Now remember strategy, which was one of those defensive behaviors. What Gibb talked about with strategy is that I'm manipulating. And again, if someone suspects that we're manipulating them, they're usually not going to go along with us and maintain a supportive climate. But if they think we are being open, honest, and spontaneous, they are much less likely to get defensive. So spontaneity is the third behavior that can help maintain or bring about a supportive climate, where I'm open and honest with you, I'm not trying to manipulate, I'm not trying to hide issues. So that's what Gibb was talking about with spontaneity. All right, the fourth behavior is empathy. And empathy contrasts with neutrality. Gibb's definition of neutrality, remember, is that I don't care about you. I don't care what you think. We're going to do what I say. Your opinions don't matter for whatever reason. Empathy is where I really do try to look at things from your perspective. I do care about your opinions. I may not agree with them, but I am communicating to you that I want to hear your opinion, that I do value your perspective. I may go on to talk about the problem and indicate that it's not going to work for a variety of reasons, but initially I do want to hear a variety of different opinions. I want to hear perspectives, and most importantly, in interpersonal communication, I want to hear your perspective. I want to hear your point of view. If people suspect that our significant other or our coworker at work really does want to hear our opinion, that matters a lot, doesn't it? And it creates and maintains a supportive climate where I feel as though I can share my views because people do care about them. Okay, so that's the fourth behavior, empathy. Now, remember with superiority. Superiority is where I'm smarter, I'm better, I'm prettier, I'm whatever, and so you're going to do what I want you to do. Creates an instinctive defensive reaction. The flip side of that is equality. In order to help maintain or bring about a supportive climate, Gibb suggests that we use equality. And equality is that it's very simple to see what it means. It means that we're equal. It doesn't mean we're equal on everything. Certainly there are some areas where I know more than my spouse. There are certain content areas, there are certain topics that I as a coworker know better, know more about than the person that I work with or for. But I also need to realize that they know more about other things. And that's kind of where that equality comes into play. I know more about certain things, you know more about certain things. It goes hand in hand with empathy as well. I want to hear your perspective. In this instance, perhaps I do have a little bit more expertise, but in other areas you do. If I maintain that perspective that we are equal, although there may be some instances where I have to tell you what has to be done, there may be other instances where I have to listen and respond to what you say has to be done. But again, if you're treating me with equality, if I'm treating you with equality, we stand a much better chance of maintaining and a supportive climate where we feel more comfortable interacting, problem solving, dealing with issues. Okay, so the last behavior that can help bring about a supportive as opposed to a defensive climate, deals with the defensiveness of certainty. Certainty is where there's no room for your view. My view is right. We absolutely know that, and we're operating from here. And again, an instinctive defensive reaction is going to raise up as a result of that. Provisionalism is the flip side. Provisionalism is the sixth behavior that Gibb identified that can help maintain or bring about a supportive climate. And the way I like to think about provisionalism is just leaving the door ajar, just a tiny little bit, just in case I'm wrong. Because I'm sure we can all think of instances where we were absolutely certain that we were right. We knew for sure that this happened last Friday, and there was no question about it. We were sure about it. And then somebody proved to us that we were wrong, and we kind of had to eat crow. I mean, it's not a really good feeling being proven wrong, but with certainty, that's what it tends to bring about. When I operate with certainty, it tends to bring about that instinct for someone to prove us wrong because they feel as though they're being threatened. Provisionalism, again, just leave the door ajar just a little bit. There's a really easy way to do this if you're sincere. An easy way to do this, instead of saying I know, to say I think. I think this is the best way to work it. I remember that we said that last Thursday that we both agreed to do this. Just adding I think sincerely, because we do need to recognize that sometimes our memories are not accurate, sometimes we forget information, sometimes we interchange data, and while we may be convinced we're right, if we act as though we know we're right, we're going to bring about a defensive reaction. Whereas if we're just a little bit provisional, if we just allow that we might not be right, that's going to help maintain or bring about a supportive climate. So those are the 6 behaviors, total of 12, 6 on the supportive side, 6 on the defensive side. What we want to think about is we want to use those behaviors on the left, the supportive behaviors. If we're a sender, most important, because as we send messages, we want to be sure that we're operating with description, with focusing on the problem, we're being open and honest, we do have a concern for the other person's point of view, we're treating each other as equals, and we're provisional, we're tentative. We recognize that our opinion might not be the only opinion. So as a sender, we want to be certain to maintain those kinds of behaviors. This is where it gets hard, and this is where we are different from animals in the wild. Animals in the wild, their instincts kick in and that's it. They respond to their instincts. People, our instincts kick in, but we're critical, thoughtful animals that can critically think, and we can choose how we behave. So as a receiver, if someone talks to me with evaluation or control or strategy or neutrality or any of those, I can choose not to get defensive. I can, can't I? I mean, my instincts can come up, but I can retract my claws, I can put the little bowl of milk away, and I can say instead, when someone's saying, how can you be so rude? Instead of my saying, well, you're not so great yourself, I can pull back the claws, and I can say, well, I'm not sure I understand what you mean. What did I do that was rude? I guess I didn't see it that way. So I can force myself as a receiver, and of course with the transactional model of communication, I am simultaneously a receiver and a sender of messages. But I can force myself to retract my claws and to take the high road and to try to get the other person to get to the right side of the page, the supportive behaviors. That would be the left side of the page, the supportive behaviors. So as a receiver, I don't want to fall into that trap of responding instinctively. I can notice it. I can be aware of my instincts, but then I want to respond in a way that can try to help maintain or bring about a more supportive climate. And that's probably even harder to do. The receiving the message, if it's sent from someone utilizing defensive behaviors, it's harder to respond well to those. It's so much easier to just click into the defensiveness. And then you just, you're maintaining defensiveness, you're continuing that cycle. It doesn't solve problems, it doesn't deal with issues, it just cycles the negative communication. And that tends to break down lots of other things. And again, unfortunately, with interpersonal communication, there aren't any guarantees. There aren't any guarantees. But what we want to try to do is realize that if we can try to improve our communication by utilizing supportive rather than defensive behaviors, odds are we're going to be able to communicate more effectively with that person. We're going to be able to talk more about the issues, and we're going to be able to get our message across and understood as to what it is we were trying to send. And as a receiver, we want to be able to try to swing the message over so that we can focus on the problem, so that we can describe behavior, so that we can treat each other with equality. Our goal is not to allow our hackles to be raised, either as a sender or as a receiver of messages. It can do nothing but help to improve any of our communication in any interpersonal climate.